Our story begins with a boy who had already lost almost everything long before he ever stepped into another world. A boy named Taisun, who woke up each day to the same white hospital ceiling and the same question from the same doctor, asking him gently how he felt today. And even before he answered, frustration would echo inside his chest because the question never changed, and neither did the truth. So he would quietly say that his legs still hurt, even though he already knew what the doctor would say next, that they might increase the dose of his medicine, that Nurse Kim would come help him back to his room, that everything would continue exactly as it always did. And while Nurse Kim spoke kindly and guided him with careful hands, his thoughts drifted somewhere darker because he had stopped wondering what went wrong, stopped asking why fate chose him, and instead felt like everything meaningful had ended the day he woke up half-paralyzed, leaving him with pitying looks, monthly insurance payments, and the harsh truth that his body no longer belonged to him the way it once had. And as he lay there, he remembered the accident clearly, the drunk driver, the sudden crash, how that morning had been completely ordinary with a simple stop at a convenience store to buy a can of beer and a few snacks before heading home, and then, just like that, pain exploded through his life and split it into before and after. And even now, when Nurse Kim gently laid him down on the bed, he sometimes felt a strange phantom agony in his legs, as if invisible blades were cutting through them. And he had no choice but to rely on medicine each night while thinking about that saying that God only gives trials you can endure. But deep down, he would whisper that he would have preferred death to living half alive like this, and so novels became his only escape. Happy endings became his small borrowed comfort, worlds where pain could be healed and dreams actually meant something. And one night he found himself finishing a novel called The Mage Who Dominates the World, determined to read until the very end before sleeping. And the story followed a powerful protagonist named Aiden who destroyed everything in his path and finally won, only to choose to end the old world and create a new one by erasing everyone's memories and building reality according to his own will, even bringing back those who had suffered terrible deaths and allowing them to live as winners in this new world, smiling as if nothing tragic had ever happened. And Tyson stared at the final page in disbelief because after all that struggle, all that sacrifice, why erase it all? Why end the world just to rewrite it? And tears quietly filled his eyes as he muttered that he just wanted a real happy ending. Yet he knew that when he woke up tomorrow, happiness would still be something far away from him. And then, suddenly, when he opened his eyes again, a message floated before him showing the words, "The Mage Who Dominates the World beginning." And his heart nearly stopped as he jolted upright, wondering if he had hallucinated from stress, looking around in confusion and realizing he had fallen asleep in the hospital room, questioning if this was still a dream, reaching for his phone only to find it gone, noticing instead a bowl of water nearby, and when he looked into it, his breath caught because the face staring back was not his own. And before he could fully process it, another message appeared, clearer than the first, telling him that he was now inside the world of the mage who dominates the world and must live as a character named Moore Bernard. And his mind raced as he connected the truth that this was the same novel he had just finished reading. And Moore was not even a main character but an extra, someone minor in the grand narrative, and confusion twisted inside him until yet another message warned that if Moore died, he too would die. And panic surged through his thoughts as he tried to stand and then froze because he could feel his legs, truly feel them, and when he placed his feet on the wooden floor, the sensation was vivid and real, so different from the numb emptiness he had known, and more information flooded into his head like a storm. Memories that were not his own, Moore's memories blending with his consciousness, and he learned that Moore Bernard was the illegitimate son of the powerful Archduke Bernard family, born with immense magical power yet burdened by the stigma of being a bastard, not even knowing who his mother was, and despite his overwhelming strength that could rival even the protagonists combined, Moore had been ambushed during a ritual meant to fully control his psyche, and was killed by the protagonist and his allies, making him nothing more than a disposable side character in the original story. And Tyson's heart pounded as he wondered why he had become this particular person, and then another message appeared urging him to change the fate of destruction if he wished his desire to be granted. And slowly, he understood that the destruction referred to the novel's ending itself, that he would need to protect the world from the protagonist who would one day try to reset everything. And for a moment, he thought maybe this was just a dream born from exhaustion and despair. But even if it was, he did not want to wake up because going back to his old life felt like returning to a prison. So he clenched his fist with new determination, realizing that this might be the chance he had begged for in silent prayers, his wish clear in his heart to regain his body as it was before the accident. Yet he also understood he should not limit himself to only that, because now he possessed Moore's talent and knowledge of the entire novel's future, and he knew every twist, every betrayal, every coming disaster, and so a slow, resolute smile formed on his lips as he made a promise to himself that he would not only try to save this world from its doomed ending, but he would succeed. And even though Moore Bernard carried the painful title of illegitimate child within the Archduke's bloodline, even though his life had been filled with silent scorn and hidden glances this time, things would be different, because Tyson was no longer a helpless boy in a hospital bed, and from this moment on, nothing in this world would unfold the same way again. Moore Bernard's life had never been simple. It was built on quiet wounds that began the moment his mother died only days after giving birth to him. And from From that day forward, he carried a cruel nickname whispered behind his back: the boy who killed his own mother. Words that cut deeper than any blade, leaving him small and defenseless against the stares and mockery of others. And even though none of it was his fault, guilt wrapped around him like chains, shaping the lonely childhood he endured until the year he turned 15, the age when the blood of the Bernard family was said to awaken, a terrifying rite known as the awakening of the new blood, a ritual that forced the body to endure pain like being swallowed by flames from head to toe, a trial so brutal that even strong outsiders had less than 1 chance in 5 to survive it. Yet if someone endured it, they would gain power that could shake the land itself, and against all expectations more survived, not only living through the agony but awakening immense strength within his veins. And in the final letter his mother had left behind, she had told him that if he survived his 15th birthday, he must seek out Archduke Bernard's household. So following those fading words like a final thread of love, he traveled to the grand residence of the Archduke to undergo testing and demand recognition from the father he had never met. And inside this body, Tyson remembered everything clearly, because in the original story he knew Moore was only an extra character in the mage who dominates the world, while Archduke Bernard stood as one of the main villains. And he also understood that the family already had legitimate heirs, meaning Moore would never truly inherit anything. His desperate wish to be acknowledged only made him a convenient tool for the Archduke to manipulate, a loyal servant forged from hunger for approval. And yet the power sleeping in Moore's awakened blood was said to surpass even the protagonist's strength, though the true limits were never fully revealed in the novel. And Tyson felt a strange excitement rising inside him as he wondered just how strong he now was. But before he could explore that thought, the door opened and a stern man entered, scolding him for forgetting what day it was. And Tyson recognized him immediately as Todd, the instructor assigned to oversee the evaluation, his posture rigid, his gaze sharp like someone who had seen countless battles. And when Todd looked at him, he paused slightly, noticing something different in Moore's eyes, but brushed it off as imagination, then reminded him that today was the test that would determine his potential. And although Moore had not received formal training, Todd assumed he could fight, and Tyson realized he would have to step into combat sooner than expected, though at least this was not a battle to the death. And with quiet acceptance, he followed Todd toward the training camp, hearing him mention something said the previous day, asking if he had forgotten. And when Tyson asked what he meant, Todd reminded him never to reveal that he was the Archduke's son, an unspoken rule that bastards must remain silent. And Tyson nodded calmly, even though rumors had already spread through the estate. Whispers that the Archduke once loved someone before, whispers that Moore was proof of it, and he knew that once he officially became a warrior, his identity would no longer stay hidden. And when he arrived at the training grounds, several seasoned fighters were already there, their eyes sharp, their bodies built from discipline. And one apprentice glanced at him and asked if he was the rookie being evaluated today, noticing that many of them looked older and carried themselves like true warriors rather than simple trainees. And Todd stepped forward and asked if he understood the Bernard family's fighting style. And Tyson answered smoothly that before training they used weapons like anyone else, but once properly trained, members of the Bernard bloodline relied only on their bodies, shaping themselves into living weapons, while those without Bernard blood had to learn various combat techniques and use blades or spears to compete. And as he spoke, he reflected on how the Bernard family was known across the continent as the most powerful warrior organization, famous for dominating hand-to-hand combat without needing any weapon at all, their physical strength alone surpassing steel. And Todd explained that today's test would determine which faction he would join and how he would be trained. Then he called forward a warrior named Vincent, who stepped into the field with calm confidence, and Todd ordered Moore to fight him, emphasizing that this match would shape his future and prove whether his blood was truly Bernard. And Vincent studied him closely, wondering aloud how old he was and whose son he might be given his solid build, then challenged him to show his skill. And as the fight began, Tyson let out a quiet breath, thinking that there were probably many other illegitimate sons scattered among these ranks, not only Moore, but he pushed the thought aside because in this world, power decided everything. And even though part of him longed for a peaceful life somewhere far from politics and expectations, he understood he had to display strength if he wanted freedom. So without hesitation, he stepped forward and threw a punch toward Vincent, the wind slicing past his knuckles. And though Vincent managed to dodge in time, surprise flickered across his face as he realized that this so-called untrained boy already moved like someone who understood combat far too well. And in that instant, as their eyes met across the training field, Tyson felt something shift deep within him, because from here on, nothing would be simple anymore. When Vincent accused him of lying about not knowing how to fight, Tyson felt a strange mix of confusion and quiet excitement, because even he had been surprised by how light and natural his body moved. And deep down, he remembered that back in his old life, he had practiced some martial arts as a casual hobby when he was younger. Nothing serious, just something to pass the time. But now he realized that even those small, forgotten movements had settled into his muscles, shaping his instincts. So when he followed his first punch with a swift kick aimed at Vincent's side, it felt almost automatic, and Vincent raised his arms to block. Yet the force still pushed him backward across the training ground, dust rising under his boots. And with a frustrated frustrated breath, Vincent admitted the boy had real skill and insisted he must have lied about being untrained. But Tyson shook his head calmly and said he had only copied what he had seen others do, which only seemed to anger Vincent further, because in the next second, Vincent's hand began to glow faintly as he gathered mana into his strike, and the air itself seemed to tremble with that invisible energy, and one of the apprentices gasped loudly, realizing that Vincent was using mana in a simple evaluation match, and another apprentice nervously asked instructor Todd to stop the fight, since Moore had never formally learned mana combat. But Todd stood still with folded arms and allowed the duel to continue, and Tyson felt a flicker of disbelief that Vincent would go that far just to put him in his place, yet he steadied his breathing, watching carefully as Vincent smirked and charged forward with a mana-infused punch meant to crush him. But at the very last instant, Tyson shifted his weight and dodged cleanly, the glowing fist cutting through empty air, and Vincent's eyes widened because he could not understand how a newcomer could read mana techniques so clearly. And before he could recover from his shock, Tyson felt warmth gather in his own hand, a glow forming around his knuckles, and with calm confidence he said it was now his turn, raising his fist as Vincent lifted his arms to defend himself, still struggling to accept that someone who had trained for years in mana combat might lose to a supposed beginner. And then, before Vincent could fully process what was happening, Tyson's punch slammed into his stomach with terrifying force, the impact lifting Vincent completely off the ground and sending him flying through the air as if struck by a cannon, and the entire training field fell silent, shock written across every face, even Todd staring in disbelief as he realized he had underestimated the boy's power, because the novice he had dismissed had just sent an official Bernard warrior crashing down with a single blow. And as Tyson stepped closer, he quietly observed Vincent's strength and endurance, thinking to himself that these warriors truly were built differently, and he braced again when he saw Vincent twitch as if trying to stand, ready to fight once more. But his expression shifted when he realized Vincent had already lost consciousness, and murmurs spread among the apprentices, one asking how a trained warrior could fall in one hit, another questioning where this mysterious boy had come from, and Tyson looked toward Todd with a trace of concern in his voice, admitting that he had not yet learned to control his strength and feared he might seriously injure someone if the fight continued. And Todd cleared his throat and reminded everyone that as an instructor, it was his duty to push those being evaluated to their limits to measure their potential, and he accused Tyson again of lying about never having trained. But the boy insisted he had never received formal combat education, and Todd demanded to know how he could use mana without being taught the technique. So Tyson calmly activated mana in his hand once more as proof, explaining that after suffering a high fever during the awakening of the new blood, he suddenly found he could sense and control mana, though he admitted he did not fully understand it himself, choosing carefully not to reveal everything he knew because some truths were better kept hidden, and Todd remained doubtful, pressing him for more proof. So after a brief pause, Tyson described the awakening process and how something within him had changed afterward, and in the original story it was known that Moore possessed extraordinary talent, even able to use mana before his awakening, because the blood of the god of combat, Bernard, and the sky goddess Jita flowed together inside him, creating a rare harmony that made him almost miraculous. And even without training, he would later surpass Archduke Bernard himself, who was considered the strongest successor of the combat god. And Todd's eyes narrowed as he muttered that if this was true, then the boy standing before him was not ordinary but a monster in the making. And he asked whether Tyson even knew who Vincent was, and the boy answered honestly that he had only met him today. So Todd explained that Vincent was a fully trained Bernard warrior who had endured brutal instruction from childhood and passed every demanding trial to earn his status, which meant defeating him so easily was no small matter. And hearing that, Tyson exhaled quietly, realizing the weight of what he had done. And Todd announced that Vincent had scored 200 points on a previous evaluation, where the maximum was 100, implying that Tyson had far exceeded expectations. And the boy frowned slightly because no one had properly explained the test to him, and he admitted he did not fully understand its purpose. So Todd clarified that the evaluation determined a warrior's current level, as the Bernard family followed a 3-tier curriculum where warriors advanced step by step, and only by passing the final level could one become an officially recognized Bernard warrior. And as Todd spoke, Tyson felt the path ahead stretching out before him, long and uncertain. Yet somewhere inside his chest, a quiet fire was burning brighter than ever, because for the first time since his accident, he was not helpless, and in this world, strength meant freedom, and he was beginning to realize just how far that strength might take him.